You're listening to the School Growth Strategies podcast, brought to you by Hubbli. In this show, John O'Landon draws on his vast experience and expertise to deliver actionable advice to private school administrators who are ready to take the next steps toward running a more efficient and sustainable private school business. I'm your host, Ryan Cowden, and this week we're joined once again by John O'Landon. In this episode of the School Growth Strategies podcast, Jono and I discuss how you can modify the design of your school website to generate more parent inquiries. These days, every school has a website. Websites provide parents, students, teachers, and the wider community access to a ton of information about that school. But simply having a website doesn't mean it's providing what you need it to provide. Today, we offer you a different way to think about your school website. Instead of seeing it as an archive of information, we invite you to think of your website as a portal for attracting new families to your school. If you include a few basic elements on your website, you can efficiently attract and connect with the interested parents in your community. On this episode, you'll hear the value of parent inquiries. If you look at your advertising from a marketing perspective, the purpose of your efforts should be less centered on branding and raising awareness, and more on getting interested parents to reach out and connect with your school. Your main goal should be to get parents to submit their contact info to set up a school tour. That is the best way to get the most out of your advertising efforts. Next, we'll discuss the ideal ways to communicate with prospective families. You should try to automate your parent communication system until they arrive in person at your school for a tour. This arrangement will be preferable both to you and the parents. Then we'll cover how you should design your homepage. You don't have to send parents to the front page of your website. Instead, set up a landing page for new parents and direct them there. And finally, we'll talk about some simple first steps to take as you begin to redesign your website. Simplifying your homepage and having a clear call to action for new parents are great ways to get what you really want from your website. If you're ready to upgrade your website and increase parent engagement with your school, then this is one episode you won't want to miss. There's a lot of actionable advice in this episode, so grab something to write with because you're going to want to take notes. As always, I'll be back on the other side to wrap up any loose ends. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with John O'Landon. All right, Jono, welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So today we're talking about the basic elements your website needs to drive more parent inquiries. And I thought an interesting place to start would be just talking about the value of parent inquiries in the first place. Why should that be important for a school to get?
It's for enrollment purposes. There's really as far as the kind of business that a school is. I have this conversation a lot actually with a lot of school directors,
Sure.
or heads of schools, or school owners. They don't necessarily come from a wealth of marketing background. They've obviously spent usually the majority of their career being an education expert. So I have to do a lot of sort of marketing 101 type of conversations just to make sure there's a sort of basic agreed understanding of how marketing works for a private school. And I think that it's not like they don't get it. They run the school and they understand that they generate their business by parents coming into the school and coming in for a tour. Essentially, that's really how they how they sort of close the deal, so to speak.
Okay.
That's how they sell to their customers by way of doing a tour. Whereas, obviously, different kinds of businesses make sales in different ways. So a conversation I have a lot is about the inquiry being the one and only real goal for their marketing strategy. Oftentimes when I talk to school directors, I ask them, what are their goals for marketing? A lot of times they say things like, "Oh, we want to get the awareness out there, or get exposure, or brand. We want to do branding," and that it sort of initially kind of makes a lot of sense, right? They want more people to know about their school, But when you get into like real specifics about what works best as a marketing strategy, um, as a just as a sort of as a basic you know um, truth about business growth and marketing, every business needs to develop a marketing strategy that um, is responds to how their customers make a buying decision,
Hmm.
right? So,
Right.
and that sounds pretty obvious when you say it, but
Yeah.
when you look at how most schools, when they're trying to do some marketing on their own, they end up doing a lot of branding type of tactics,
Okay.
um, and so these are things that don't actually result in inquiries. Like parents actually, like the right parents specifically for their school, inquiring about enrolling their children. So they do things that are more suited to a company like Coca-Cola,
Mm.
where it's like
Right.
Coca-Cola really just does branding marketing. They don't.
Mm.
It's not like you need to go visit Coca-Cola's head office and have a sit down with the CEO to decide to buy a Coke rather than a Pepsi at the corner
Sure.
store, right?
Right. Right.
So, but for parents of a private school, they do have to get in their car and schedule a time to come in and figure out how they're going to create the time to do that and go through all of that labor and that effort and actually show up at the school, take that it's quite, I mean, because this is a huge decision for
Sure.
parents
Sure.
where they're going to enroll their children, especially with a private school, considering how much tuitions can be. It's be expensive, and it's got huge implications for the future of their children. So
Sure.
um, so the inquiry is, you know, really the sort of the goal of a marketing strategy. Everything is kind of centered around the inquiry, because what schools need to do is lead generation marketing. They need to get parents to uh, inquire and
Mm.
give, and an inquiry could be different things, but um, ideally it's generally speaking, the best way, the initial inquiry is for the parents to sort of submit their personal contact information and say, I'd like to, learn more about the school,
Okay.
type of thing.
Right. Do you feel like the target market here are these parents who are already looking to switch schools, or are you maybe trying to put your school out there and put the idea in people's heads?
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, you definitely want to be focusing on the parents that are, um, uh, they don't have to be actively looking at that moment, but they have to be parents that are uh, either are doing it or should be doing it. They're probably procrastinating.
Okay.
So depending on how depending on what your your uh, your platform is of choice for marketing,
Right.
whether let's like just to compare like Google as opposed to Facebook, whereas Google people are actively out there searching for something,
Right.
and so you're getting in front of them at that point, and getting their attention then when they're actually looking for something, pulling them in, and then also as opposed to Facebook, where they may or may not be looking for something, but they are Facebook has this amazing ability to target people,
Yeah.
and so you can be targeting parents that have children of the right ages in the right area with certain interests that your ideal parents have, and then so you're getting in front of them at at the right time.
Okay. Great. So I'd like to talk about what's the best method of communication here that we're trying to set up. So you mentioned that the goal of this marketing is for parents to submit their contact information to you so you can get back in touch with them. That's kind of the ideal scenario?
Well, yeah, I mean, so interestingly, you don't really so much need to. I mean, that's one way the process can work.
Okay.
At the same time, I actually suggest that schools shouldn't be following up with parents.
Hmm.
Um, I actually think that schools really shouldn't be giving parents any attention until they actually show up at the school for
Hmm.
the tour. Not because mainly because there's ultimately, until the parent actually shows up for the tour, they don't really deserve the time of the staff in the school.
Okay.
So they haven't actually made that, they haven't taken enough of a they haven't gone through enough labor, so to speak. They haven't shown that they're serious enough about checking out the school. Unfortunately, most schools spend a lot of time. Most whether they're director of enrollment or at a smaller school, sort of like an owner operator that spends half a day in the classroom and then the rest of the day trying to catch up with all the administrative things.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
they spend a lot of time chasing parents that are basically just kicking the tires or not nearly as serious as other parents, and that's unfortunate because there's always parents that there's generally not enough time for these folks to to give attention to the parents and the students and the staff that actually do deserve their time, right? They've got parents that are actually paying tuition.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that they actually need to really try to reserve a lot of time for face-to-face time, communication, all that stuff. So I try to help schools avoid that scenario where they're following up and making phone calls to these prospective parents that have maybe submitted their contact information. Now, this is also tied to having a system that helps them, a system that automates the process from once a parent submits, an inquiry form, um, the rest of the process should actually be automated,
Okay.
right? Because at that stage of the relationship, the communication should be very standardized.
Okay.
What happens is a lot of people will try to start developing this relationship with these parents that are just kind of checking them out. The analogy I use a lot, it's like, when parents are checking out schools in the area, when they're actively checking out schools, they're kind of going on first dates, so to speak,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And so I like this analogy because dating and marriage and stuff like that, these are big decisions,
Sure.
right? And where you're gonna put your child is also a really big decision. It's expensive, and it has, like I said, it has a big impact on your children's future. So
Right.
so when these predominantly it's moms are going through this process, and they're inquiring at usually multiple schools in the area.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking for a relationship at that stage,
Hmm.
right? They're on that
Okay.
first date, so to speak. So what they're really looking for is just professional, organized, concise communication that kind of teaches them how to get to the next step for learning more about the school.
Okay.
And that can be, like that can be automated with
Yeah.
there's so many different ways to automate that. There's marketing automation tools, autoresponders, and there's just an endless list of ways to automate that process. And the truth is, what happens oftentimes, unfortunately, far too often, is school directors like call these moms, and they really don't want phone calls. Like
Hmm.
this demographic,
Okay.
an average, let's say, generally speaking, it's a mom between the age of 25 to 44.
Okay.
And schools are, uh, usually focused on getting the younger children in at the beginning so that they can,
Right.
because obviously it's better, it's a healthier business if you've got a child coming in at the earliest years and staying with the school through the whole scope of their program. So
Yeah.
the ideal kind of target is on average like a 28-year-old mom.
Hmm.
They don't want phone calls. Like they don't,
Okay.
you know,
True. Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
they don't want a relationship yet. They don't want to get on the phone and start sharing information and getting the warm and fuzzies yet. They
Mm-hmm.
do want they want to try to figure out if they want to do that, and that's kind of the next stage, which is coming in for that tour. And
Okay.
that's really where that happens, where that relationship starts.
Okay.
Where it's in person, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah.
So automating the process kind of leaves it in their hands to kind of work at their own pace, and that's more what they are comfortable with, right?
Well, yeah. So obviously, you need a good automated process that makes sure that it gives them reminders and
Mm-hmm.
keeps on engaging them, and makes it really clear, and actually, it needs to be a pleasurable experience,
Yeah.
for that parent. But that it really should be automated, and you really want to stay away from phone calls as
Okay.
much as possible at that stage.
Sure. So the focus of this conversation really is kind of like, how does this website, how does the school website, how
Mhm.
can we gear that up to create these conversions?
Yeah,
I just want to talk about kind of like the homepage, the landing page of the website, because those can sometimes be, overcrowded or overwhelming. So how do you put this information on kind of the front page, or how do you think about
yeah,
your main page design?
yeah. So the homepage is, you know, I get a lot of I shock a lot of people when I talk about what they should actually be doing with their website because
Okay.
I see school websites all day long,
Yeah.
you know, um,
Okay.
and everybody does the same thing.
Hmm.
It's remarkable
Okay.
how it's like,
Interesting.
and everybody does this. They have the same, navigation items, and they have the same information, and a lot of there's a lot of mistakes that everybody's doing, and that's why I'm really hopeful about the industry and that I can really have an impact, with this information
Cool.
because there's just actually, it's really just a short list of things that everyone's doing that are all making it harder for them. Um, um, that I don't even know if these things used to work in the
Hmm.
past, but what I do know is that
Yeah.
the landscape of the private school market has really changed
Hmm.
over the last 20 years.
Okay.
There's like it's a very different sort of environment that if you consider like in the U.S. just as an example, there's 25% more private schools than was 25 years ago. So there's
Wow.
been a lot of growth,
Yeah.
and at the same time, parents are having about half the amount of children per family
Hmm.
as they used to have. So those two trends are kind of working, against each other, so to speak.
Sure.
And so there's that, and then at the same time, parents and the average age of a school director or the administrator is 49 years old. The
Hmm.
average age of the parent that is kind of ideal for the school to target is a 28-year-old.
Yeah.
And so 20 years ago, those two demographics had more or less the same communication behaviors and expectations, the way they engaged, local marketing, or there wasn't online marketing back then, right?
Right.
Really. So
Right.
now the way those two demographics, so every year the school director is actually, is getting older, but that 28-year-old mom is coming in the same age every year, right?
Right.
So over the last 5 to 10 years, um like there's been this growing divide between the people running the school and their sort of knowledge, they're just hands-on knowledge of how to communicate with this
Sure.
demographic has really just kind of fallen. The ground has kind of shifted underneath their feet,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Because
Right.
because and it's kind of unfair when you think about it, because nobody trained them for this. You don't learn this
Hmm.
when you're becoming an educator or an administrator.
Yeah.
So the website, um, and so, well, the other thing too is, like, I don't even know really what worked in the past 20 years ago for
Yeah.
marketing.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody knows, because nobody was really tracking the performance of what they did.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, you just needed to have a good school,
Okay.
and the school would stay full,
Okay.
from word of mouth. So
Right.
when I ask a school director, or a principal, like, what do you guys do for marketing right now? Um, I hear the same things all the time. One of the things I always hear is, "Oh, we do word of mouth marketing."
Hmm.
It's like, well, you don't do word of mouth marketing. That's not a marketing strategy. That's a result, right? That's You have a good school, and for most schools, that's still where they get the the largest proportion of their new students, and it probably always will be that way. But for most schools today, that's just not enough anymore. It's not filling up their school any longer. It's not getting them to that point where they're at capacity and they have a waiting list. So schools are seeing like their enrollments kind of go up and down, but sort
Hmm.
of trending down generally.
Okay. Yeah.
So things are really different. So, as an example, what they do with their websites is consistently wrong across the board,
Sure.
and their websites are actually making it less likely. Unfortunately, their websites are making it much less likely that parents will actually inquire and come into the school for a tour.
Okay.
So, a couple of the main mistakes that schools are making is, number one, they're first of all, when they do pay for traffic, they're sending people to their homepage,
Hmm.
which is like like big no-no, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the reason why is because their homepage is not designed for that specific source of traffic,
Right.
right? So what they should be doing is if you have an ad on Google or on Facebook or anywhere else where someone clicks on it and it goes somewhere, that ad should go to a dedicated landing page that is designed specifically for that person that's coming from that ad from that source. So
Right.
somebody that's coming from Google, you know, like that's just kind of like lead generation,
Sure.
best practice 101 is when you have and you're running an ad, when you're paying for that traffic, you shouldn't send people to your homepage. Generally, everybody I talk to, that's what they're doing. They're just sending them to their homepage. But their homepage is, it's their main website and it's got information for like everybody. So
Yeah.
schools are writing their websites for uh, prospective parents, for existing parents, for staff, for
Right.
alumni,
Yeah.
for the community, when actually their website, their public website should really have one focus,
Hmm.
should be written for one person, and that should be the prospective parents. Because your website is its number one goal is your marketing platform. So um, now, I'm not like there are ways to use websites for existing parents and staff, and there's different parent portal, solutions out
Yeah.
there. There's many of them,
Okay.
and that's the right way to right. So that's information that it should be usually accessible behind a login, that type of thing. So a parent logs in, and then they can see other information, right? I mean,
Right.
so really, I mean, just again, as a web design
Yeah.
sort of best practice, you should be writing as much as possible to one person.
Okay.
And so when a school is having a hard time getting their enrollment up and they're paying for traffic, and sometimes not sometimes, a lot of times, they get sold by some local Google ad, professional or some local Facebook ad person or an SEO person who just drives traffic to their website. But
Right.
unfortunately, that's not enough. I mean, it's actually a multi-step process that includes the ad and the website, and then also follow up.
Hmm.
That and all of that stuff has to be tied together and done the right way, and thought and put together strategically from as a whole journey
Hmm.
from top to bottom to the point when the parent actually shows up for a tour. That should be one continuous system that is working at all different points in concert.
Right. Right.
And it's really unfortunate because every day I talk to schools that are. I mean, I what I tell them is like, whether you work with us or not, stop spending money on marketing right now.
Hmm.
Like, stop paying for. They try to run Facebook ads, and they don't understand that it really takes like a team of experts to do this properly.
Sure.
And a team of
Yeah.
experts with different skills
Okay.
that it shouldn't is usually not even found within one person.
Okay.
Somebody that's good with design isn't usually good. I mean, not sometimes there's people that can do many things, but oftentimes somebody that's like a really good copywriter isn't necessarily very good at implementing tracking pixels on web pages,
True.
and setting up an analytics tracking system that actually, helps the school
Right.
create like a predictable, marketing system that lets them know exactly when they're going to fill up their enrollment positions and know exactly what their cost of acquisition of a student is going to be
Hmm.
is usually not somebody who's the best copywriter. You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
Just as an example, because
Yeah.
there's usually different talents and different skill sets are found with different kind of personalities type of thing.
Absolutely. Okay. So we just have a couple minutes left. I was wondering if maybe you could just, if you're a school administrator and you're running a
Yeah.
school and you've been listening along, what's maybe a good first step for them to take in terms of starting this process of overhauling the website?
Yeah, a good first step I would say would be, you know, um, look at all like all the one kind of triage thing I try to get schools to do
Hmm.
is take the navigation that's always at the top of their website where it's like about us, contact us, our philosophies, our program, da, 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 and there's like and then there's sub navigations on all of them. Like now they usually can't do this themselves, but if they have somebody that can help them, take that navigation and just get rid of it,
Okay.
right? And if and in the least remove it from the top of the page and drop it down to the bottom of the page, and make the website act more like a landing page, where once and make sure it's really focused and written for the prospective parent that you want to get to book a tour, and make it very, very clear on that web page with a big button, that's a color that really has a lot of contrast with all the other colors on the page, like book a tour. Just a big call to action that it's not like that it where it couldn't be any more clear what that person is supposed to do on that web page. And it shouldn't be like, get to know us, or keep in touch, or anything that's kind of like that requires a why, a question afterwards. There should be a call to action that is book a tour. Like, tell them what you want them to do. Make it, unequivocally clear, and make it really clear. Make it very obvious that that's the most important thing for them to do on that web page. You want them to see that more than anything. And then the other main thing I would say is, think about the content that you're sharing. So the information that's on all of those other pages that they have on their website should actually be all brought. Usually schools are putting in about 80% too much information. They're breaking things down far too much, where the content that's on their website should give parents enough information to make them interested to learn more, right? So when they're talking about their programs, they shouldn't have a page explaining every program. They should maybe have a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of the different programs that they have, right? And so when you actually pare down the content on the website, that's the right amount for getting the right parent interested and incentivized to book a tour. It should all be able to fit on one page.
Okay.
So that for the parent that wants to scroll through that page and learn a little bit more and see, am I interested in going on date number 2, which is the tour, that there's just enough information to get them say, yes, I want to check out the school.
Right.
But not trying to, and here's the biggest distinction. Don't write your website as if you're trying to sell your school from the website, because your customers cannot make their decision from the website. They have to come in and meet you and do a tour at your school.
Right.
So that's the biggest distinction. And so your website is there to sell them on coming in for a tour, to learn more about your program. Don't give them all your tuition information. Give them just enough to get them to realize, you want to do a little bit of filtering. You want parents to know that there is a tuition, and so that it's not a free school.
Yeah.
But
right.
You want to stay away from giving information that will make a parent think like they got it all.
Mm-hmm.
They know everything they need to know.
Yeah.
Now I don't need to come in for a tour. Okay. That's what schools unfortunately are doing.
Okay.
Very, very consistently.
Okay. That's great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jono. This was really helpful.
Yeah, you bet. I look forward to our next one.
Yeah, me too. All right, folks, there you have it. That wraps up my conversation with Jono Landon. He shared a ton of valuable insights and advice today on how to generate more parent inquiries from your school website. We also shared some tools and resources which will all be linked up in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please consider subscribing, sharing with a friend, or leaving us a review in your favorite podcast directory. Until next time, best of luck in all that you do, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the School Growth Strategies Podcast.